Live button there.
Yeah, I'm there. Hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another session of Disruptive Talks or dtalks. And I'm your host, Anupma Mahajan, and we have a very special guest with us today, Dr. Tracey Severns. Welcome, ma'am, and welcome to the show. She
Thank
has
you.
contributed hugely in imparting education, in changing the face of education all over the world. Dr. Tracy, today we have the topic for today is basically using data to improve teaching, learning, leadership. And now a brief about our guest, Dr. Tracy. Dr. Tracy has been dedicating her career to the service of students, teachers, and administrators since 1992. She has served as a paraprofessional, a special education teacher, vice principal, principal, director of student performance, superintendent, adjunct professor, and chief academic officer for the New Jersey Department of Education. Dr. Severance has a BS in psychology, a MAT in teaching, and an ED in educational administration and supervision. Wow, so many feathers to your cap. In
Thank you.
2018, Dr. Severance joined Rutgers Graduate School of Education Center for Effective School Practices as their leadership and learning strategist. In the same year, she became a host of Disrupt Ed TV, a program dedicated to challenging the status quo in education through courageous conversations with change leaders from various fields. When the pandemic shuttered schools in March 2020, Dr. Sevens created Winds and Wonderings, a daily Zoom forum for educators to raise questions and share solutions to address unprecedented problems. To deepen the dialogue, Dr. Severance interviewed such prestigious thought leaders as Heidi Heiss, Jacobs, Rick Wormeli, Ted Dintersmith, Pam Moran, Warren. She's also a nationally recognized presenter who has provided professional development at the New Jersey State Standards, the New Jersey State Assessments, instructional leadership, data analysis, special education, educational equity, student engagement strategies, and school improvement on the state and national international levels. So, welcome, ma'am. Over to you, and let's look forward to hear more from her.
Well, thank you very much. It is my honor, my pleasure to be a part of this very important conversation. I literally cannot think of anything more important. I believe that these kinds of conversations about bringing education, literacy, numeracy, the ability to be an active member of the global community is what lies at the heart of a more peaceful and prosperous world. So it is indeed an honor, and I'm going to work on. Let's see. I want to get my screen here. Let's see. It's so I'm clicking. Oh, oh, I'm sorry. I'm having. Oh, there we go.
No,
Share.
you were there, ma'am. It was
Oh,
okay. We could see your screen. Perfect.
oh,
Please.
let's see. I apologize, everyone. Okay. Share. All right. Are we there?
Yes.
Yes. Whew. That's always the hardest part. So welcome. I invite you to join me in just a little exploration of what I believe is the essential topic in improving education on indeed on a national level. So we're going to talk about how to use data to improve teaching, learning, and leadership. And before we begin, I would like to emphasize a very important data point. And that is the answer to a very simple and yet powerful question, which is, how are you? So I believe that in order to teach children, we have to reach children first. They have to know that we care. They have to know that we see them. They have to know that we value them and respect them. So I wanted to start today by modeling the importance of a simple yet powerful check-in. So what I like to do when I'm working with children or adults is to start with this simple invitation on a scale of 1 to 10, and 1 being Alexander in the terrible, horrible, oh my goodness, couldn't be worse day, to 10 is I'm feeling great, have never felt better. How are you today? So because of the forum that we're in today, I'm going to invite you just to think of that answer for yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. How are you feeling? And I'd like you to imagine that we're in a classroom setting and we have an opportunity to surface that response, to hear from each other and really take in each other's answer. Because what I believe is that whether we ask this question or not, the answer is going to show up in your classroom. The answer is going to impact the way students engage. It's going to impact frustration tolerance. It's going to impact whether they take academic risks and even how they perform. So what I believe is that we need to give everyone in any learning environment an opportunity to first connect. I believe that the way to the head is through the heart. And when we seek to know each other, then we can really learn together. So let's move on to the important part. So who am I and what am I good at? Well, I am deeply appreciative of the very generous introduction. But if I was to tell you the one thing that I'm all about, what I believe matters more than any other topic in the area of education, it is that I am a lover of data. I am a fan of the use of data. And if you were to ask me the one thing that has changed the trajectory of my personal career and my professional journey, it would be the mindful use of data in every school and every organization I have been blessed enough to be part of. So I believe the use of data is of essential importance because we can use data to evaluate progress and performance. What I mean here is that we need to use data to answer the question, how are we doing? And how do we know? We've got to move away from claims, beliefs, and good intentions and use facts, use data, use artifacts and evidence to answer the question, how are we doing? And how do we know? Next, to establish goals and mobilize efforts. Many of you, I am sure, are familiar with the concept of inertia, where an object at rest remains at rest and an object in motion remains in motion. And one of the things that I have found is that educational organizations, like many, are inclined to become inclined to be comfortable, where they get accustomed to how things have been. They often have a great reverence for tradition. There is nothing more powerful than data to dislodge us from the place where we are and move us toward the place where we need to go. Data must lie at the heart of the goal setting process and be used as the way to propel our movement forward. We need to use data to get what we need to get the job done. If you want to get resources, if you need things, if you need to know things, data is the most powerful tool that you can use to secure the resources that you need to inform our practice. I don't know about you. I've spoken to many, many people who have beliefs about who they are and the work that they're doing. And I want us to remain with a healthy skepticism so that we always follow up with any belief with, how do you know? And we use the data to answer that question and to guide our decision making. How do we decide which approach to take? Which methodology works? It must be answered in the data. And finally, to measure, monitor and market our results, I have found that in even the most struggling schools, there are pockets, people, places of success, practices that are working. The way that we must reveal them is by using the data, and the ways that we can grow and connect those pockets is through using our data. Data grounds us in truth. It has a way of centering the conversation so that it moves outside of just opinions to a place of honest exploration of what is, so that we can move toward what can be. And speaking of that, I want to refer to a classic book called Good to Great, written by Jim Collins a number of years ago, there in 2001. But this quote is as relevant today as when it was written. And what Jim Collins says is this: a key step in any effective improvement process is an honest assessment of the current reality, indeed, a diligent effort to determine our truth. And here is a truth that I will share with you here today. When I go to schools and districts across the country, and I would bet around the world, that a truth that I have encountered is this: when I ask the people who occupy their schools to talk with me about their truth, they don't know it. And if we don't know the truth in our schools, how can we change the truth in our schools? So here are my questions. These are the things that I ask. What is your truth? Wherever you are, wherever you sit, wherever you work, where you learn, it is incumbent upon us to know these answers. So here are my questions. The first two questions are about your academic proficiency. What I'm asking is, what are you good at getting kids to be good at independently and on demand? Because that's how life comes at us. So the first question says, what are you good at getting kids to be able to do on their own? What are your areas of strength? The next question is, what are your areas of weakness? What I'm asking is, where do you struggle to get kids to be good at without you? Without your assistance or support. The first two questions are about what are you good at teaching kids to be good at doing. Look at the next set of questions. These questions are about the kids. They are about the students. Who is on a trajectory rising? Who is performing well and getting better? And which students are losing ground in relation to themselves? Every student is walking a path. Do you know it? Do we see which kids do better over time and which flatten out and which start to lose ground? We need to know our kids. And the answers to those two sets of questions are imperative because they inform the last question. Which practices, which choices, which decisions are you making that is determining, indeed shaping the answers to those other questions? In every school I have ever been in, they are making choices about how they use their finite resources, time, personnel, space, curriculum, assessment, all of those places where we make decisions. Those decisions are impacting the reality for our students and the trajectory of their journey. What I want to know from the educators in those spaces is, do you use data to determine your truth? And it is important for this reason. Until we know it and name it, we cannot own it or change it. I want us to be relentlessly curious about how the choices we make in our schools determine what happens within our schools. What lies at the center of all of these questions, what we must use to answer every inquiry, is data. So to inform our conversation today, let's become clear. Let's have a common definition of data. So let's begin with a very simple yet powerful question. For you, what comes to mind When I ask the question, what is data? What do you see? What do you picture? What comes to mind? So let me share with you my concept of data. Here it is. Ready? For me, data is information. Data is information. It's everything from the number of students who come to school, the number of kids who smile when they're there, the number of kids who raise their hand, who answer a question. It is not solely or specifically scores. It is observations of teacher practice. It's observation of relationships in the classroom. And of course, it is also the results that we achieve in our schools. So my goal as an educator is to open hearts and minds to a deeper, broader understanding of data as not just statistics. That's part, but it's not the whole thing. It's also a broader understanding of the information. It is the inputs, it's the throughputs, it's what happens in the classrooms, and it's the outputs. And we cannot look at any piece without understanding the whole, that these things are inherently connected. So if data is information, my friends, what is data analysis? So for me, data analysis is an inquiry process propelled by meaningful questions. It is at its heart, it is a wondering, it is a curiosity. It is about the relentless pursuit of new ideas and understandings. So I joke a little bit. There's that quote. Who's it by? Me. Because through my experience, I have found that this is the continuous improvement process, that first we must assess. And when I say assess, I don't mean test solely. I mean gather the information, tally, count, notice. What is the information that we need? And then we need to analyze it. We need to make it make sense. Put the data on the table. Look at the artifacts, the evidence you collect, and then, for goodness sakes, act. And if I was to share with you the place where this typically breaks down, it is in the action or the inaction. Many times we collect the information, we put it on the table, we analyze it, and then we just admire or bemoan our circumstance. I need us to move boldly to that place where we are willing and able to do things better or differently, to the place of action. Because indeed, my friends, my fellow colleagues, I will share with you, nothing will change without the courage to act, to do things better or differently than they have done in the past. So many people say to me, okay, I get it. I get it. I'm willing. I'm considering this use of data. Well, what data should we use? And my question is, what's important to you to measure? What is it that you want to know? So when I work with schools and districts, I have them conduct a data inventory, a data audit. And I have them use highlighters of different colors. I say, pick a color and list your data. What data do you have? Then I ask them, well, what data do you use? And often there's a big space. They have all of this data, but they don't always use it. And maybe that's okay, or maybe that's a problem. But first we have to notice the space between what we have and what we use. And the next question is also important. What data do you need? Because even in places that are swimming, indeed drowning in data, if you don't have the data you need, that's going to be a problem. So for my colleagues who work with our younger students, we have many elementary data sources. We can look at the number of kids who are at different reading levels, number concepts, our kindergarten screening tools, how many kids attend, how many kids are promoted, How many kids are retained? We can look at parent involvement. All of these are elementary data sources that go beyond a simple or solely a test. And at the secondary level, we can look at lab reports, we can look at projects, we can look at performances, all of which shed a light on how we're doing with our students. And again, I use a simple data audit to ask, what do you have? What do you use? What do you need? What may not lie at your fingertips? So once we know our full array of possible data sources that pertain to student performance, we also need to consider other data sources like our demographics. Who are our kids, our clients, our students? What do we notice when we look at them by race, by gender, by socioeconomic status, by our English language learners, by our special needs, our family compositions? What if we look at our students in relation to their perceptions, what it feels like to be a student in our schools or our classroom? What if we look at what people are saying about our schools on social media, about the kids who show up and about the support that we get from our communities? What if we look at our program data? This is the curriculum, the pacing guides, the instructions, the assessments, the personnel, our schedule. All of these are powerful and important data sources. And then finally, we have a data source that pertains to our teachers themselves, to our observations of their performance with kids, their summative ratings, and our observations of practice. So I surface all of this to say, what data do we need to use independently or in combination with other data domains to ask questions that can be used to probe or provoke the reality in our schools? So when I work with schools, I invite them to be curious. I say, here's what I want you to do. I want you to pick a data source. So for example, student achievement data. And then I want you to ask, what would happen if we looked at that data set in relation to another? For example, what if we looked at student achievement data in relation to gender? What if we looked at student achievement in relation to attendance? What if we looked at student achievement data in relation to particular teacher or teacher performance? So the first is a two-way interaction where I ask people in schools to be curious about their reality. The second is a three-way. What if we looked at X in relation to Y and Z? Here's an example. What if we looked at student achievement in relation to gender and ethnicity? What might we learn? What might we discover if we peel it all the way back? So here are some other critical data principles that we have to know. Anytime you look at any data source, we must walk all the way around that data point to seek to fully understand. The first question is, how is this score, how is this outcome in relation to standard? With standard being defined as passing or proficiency. The next data point is, how is this score, how is this student doing in relation to the past? This is a measure of progress, of longitudinal development over time. The last one is, and how is this score or this student in relation to others? So whenever you look at data, I'd like you to look at it in regard to these three reference points: in relation to passing, in relation to progress, and in relation to others. So when it comes to that question of others, my question for you is, who is your other? Who is a fair comparison? Who would be in your academic conference? We know that sports have conferences, right? Who are considered your sporting peers. Who is your academic peer? Because when you find that other, you can now consider your performance in relation to how others are doing who teach kids like yours. So this is how to bring meaning to the data. And when we begin the process, here's what I always ask people to do. Before I show you the answers, before I put the data on the table, before I pull back the curtain and reveal the data, I want you to make a prediction. What do you think we're going to find? So when I invite people to predict, I do it for two reasons. The first is because I seek to engage your interest. Think about it. Whenever you say to someone, make a prediction, and then you show them the facts, what does everyone want to know? Was I right? So the first part of asking people to make a prediction is it gets them invested and involved. The second reason is it surfaces their attributions. It reveals what may otherwise remain out on the surface or in the margins. What makes you say so? So if you think boys did better than girls, if you think we did better this year than last year, if you think we did better in math or ELA, I want to know why you think so. Because in your attributions lies an opportunity for me as the leader. I've got to know your thinking so that I can address what may lie at the heart of those outcomes. Our beliefs and attributions are very much what lies at the heart of our actions or inaction and our outcomes. You see, as educators, we bring certain biases to bear. Our beliefs, our assumptions, our attributions are showing up in the way we teach and in what students learn. I always begin by asking people to surface their predictions and what makes them say so. So once I put the data on the table, I draw the curtain back. I ask these 4 questions, which I have found work for every and any data source. First, I ask, what do you notice? What do you see? The work of the leader is to not do all the talking, but to invite people to surface their own noticings. Then I want to know, to what do you attribute the results? Why do you think we're getting what we're getting? The third question that I ask is about the questions that you're wondering about. What questions come to mind? What does this cause you to wonder? And then finally, what can we do? What might we do to improve student performance? At the heart of data analysis is an inquiry process where all participants engage. This is not the work of the leader. It's the work of the leader and the educators and the parents and the students. So what do we do now? We do a root cause analysis. We look to understand, why is this what we're getting? And we ask questions. How is the way we use time? How is our curriculum? How is our external? Certainly the pandemic has had a huge impact on the teaching, learning, leadership, and outcome process. And how are our cultural issues perhaps affecting what we're achieving with our students? How are our beliefs and expectations impacting our outcomes? So root cause is important because when we work to achieve change, if what we notice is everyone we're working with is stuck on attributions such as these, we should not expect big change, because as educators, we don't control these things. If what people believe is driving our outcomes are factors and forces that lie outside of our locus of control, we are not likely to achieve change. So I want to offer a revised definition of root cause. When I work with schools and districts, I want us to think about, what can we change that we have the power to change? How can we change our relationships with kids, the caliber and character and quality of instruction? How can we alter our assessments, our assignments, to engage and initiate deeper conversations about the teaching and learning process? So a technique that I would like to share with you is a success-based root cause analysis. When you're looking to lead change, Find a place that's working, an area that's getting better, and ask people, how are we doing that? What do we see as lying at the heart of this improvement? Surface those successes and then ask, how might we use these strategies over here or with them or in another way to scale up what we are good at? You know, there's two paths we can take to improve. We can look to mitigate and minimize failure, or we can look to scale up success. I believe we are better served through the latter. Let's find what we're good at and scale it up. So in the interest of time, I'm going to move to this. We're going to look at using just another simple tool is the why, what if, how, root cause strategy. We start by asking, why is this our outcome? What if we did things differently? And then how can we make that happen? So we might ask, why are 58% of our students not proficient? Well, what if we changed the time of day? What if we gave it more time? What if we changed the relationships in the room? And then how could we set about doing that? So the what ifs that we worked with when I was an educator in Mount Olive, New Jersey, is we looked to explore these what if questions. What if we changed our use of time? What if we changed our focus on teaching? What if we sought to inspire deeper levels of understanding? What if we looked to improve motivation and personalize instruction? For whatever the what ifs where you are operating, there lies an opportunity to change our past into the future we desire by connecting these things, by looking at our student data, the inputs, the throughputs, the outputs, and then setting shared goals by leveraging the synergistic effect that occurs when we make this work meaningful, manageable, and measurable, creating shared goals for students, and then creating learning plans for teachers that help them teach in a way that students achieve the goals and we alter the outcomes for kids. What lies at the heart of this work, my friends, is to move from compliance to commitment through collaboration. Please notice the way I have hyphenated that on purpose. I know that's not how it's spelled, but what I want to point out is that when we organize our schools around a small number of shared goals and we provide professional learning aligned to those goals, that the research is clear that teachers can do far better by kids and that they can learn far more effectively when we create systems in our schools where we leverage a synergistic effect. So the goal in our schools is to get people pulling on the same rope in the same direction, to leverage that synergistic effect. So I'm going to end with you with a popular cartoon from America. It's Charlie Brown, and Lucy was famous for giving advice. My advice is to use questions to propel a cycle of improvement. Assess, analyze, and for goodness sakes, act. Put the data on the table and invite everyone to be curious. What do you see? What do you believe? What questions come to mind? What could we do differently? Leverage those synergistic connections. Connect your data to your goals, to your professional learning for the adults. Because when the adults teach the students better, the students' outcomes are improved. We truly can make 1 and 1 add up to more than 2 by leveraging all of the opportunities in our schools, by working on collaboration. We can reach heights, do you like that? Otherwise unattainable when we truly work together. So I'm going to end just by sharing with you my information. This is how you could reach me. I'll go to a stop share. Let's see, did I do that all right?
Yes, brilliantly said. I mean, the way you have illustrated collaboration and your slides and your, I mean, it was absolutely brilliant. And
Oh,
how beautifully you have put that how the teachers can create a school culture and improve students' outcome by collecting data. I mean, it's such a wonderful way. I mean, nobody would have thought how data can make so much difference in a student's performance. So here, somebody on the chat box says that use questions to propel a cycle of improvement makes tremendous sense. So they say, thank you, Tracy. You have made many valuable points. This is really, really commendable. So, how do you
thank you.
think data helps to reconsider the role of teacher? Or what do you think, or who do you think is a resilient teacher then?
Well, I think that the teachers need to be relentlessly curious about how the choices they make in the classroom are impacting the students in their classroom. That we can often operate from a place of very good intention, where we believe that when we're talking about this or teaching in this way, that it's working. But we must be consistently seeking feedback in the room, looking to determine whether we are indeed reaching and teaching all of our students. You know, one of the most powerful quotes that I have learned, I believe it was from John Hattie, Hattie. He says
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
what we must do is know our students by name and by need. And when we seek to know our students by name and by need, that's when we can tailor our teaching, when we can
Absolutely.
alter our approach so that we can know for sure if the ways that we seek to teach kids are working for those students.
So true. So true. Another question that here comes to my mind is, how do you think you have used data to understand learning, and how would you, like, what will be your advice to the teachers to enhance learning in students? Like, though you put it so beautifully in the PPT, but if you have to say, like, basically put it in one line, so how would you think that data can enhance learning in a student?
It's about mining the day-to-day data that provides evidence of your effectiveness. When
Yes.
teachers teach with clarity, when I, as a teacher, know what I wish to teach today, and then I look for evidence from every child, every lesson, I know who got it and who didn't. I know where there are understandings or misunderstandings, and I can circle back with the children and make sure that they are learning.
That's true. So true. And how do you motivate the communities? How do you motivate other school principals um, to follow what you have invented as far as the significance of data is there?
I have found that there is nothing more motivating than using data as evidence of our improvement. I firmly believe that every person who is in education is committed to kids. And I believe that they work with a whole heart and with good intention. The challenge is to determine if indeed we are succeeding in our goals. And so in much the same way, I'm going to create a very I don't know. Let's think about this. Think about a time when you have ever wanted to lose weight or get fit, right? You're going to a big wedding. So I'm going to a big
Yeah.
wedding and I want to look fabulous. So I want to lose weight. So I can think about, like, oh, I hope I'm losing weight. But think about what really inspires us to get serious about our diet and exercise plan. It's when you stand on the scale and you see the numbers change. Data is a powerful motivator. So when I work with schools and districts and we graph the change, when we're able to watch those bar graphs rise, watch the line ascend, people get really motivated. I mean, that's why, think about when organizations raise money. So have you ever seen them use that thing that looks like a thermometer and it
Yeah.
rises? People love that. So the motivation is derived from the data. I have found that there's no greater way, no speech I could offer, no words of encouragement, more motivating than putting the data in a chart, in a graph, on the table. And when people look at it, they get so excited that they want to see where it can go next. And in fact, I have found the same is true when I teach children, to graph their own progress and improvement. They want to do better than they did last time. And the work that we have to be about is not competing, causing kids to try to beat each other, but be better than themselves. That's when students really lean in on the learning. They read more, they practice more, they're willing to engage in those drills and rehearsal, is when they see themselves become better versions of themselves.
Yes. Thank you. So beautifully said. Here there's a question on the chat box again. They say that seek evidence from every child in every lesson. How do you make this possible with ordinary teachers?
Well, I have a very simple technique. It's low tech and it works. Okay, you ready? So so let's say that I have just a clipboard with a piece of paper, and down the side, right, I would have my roster. I have my students' names.
Yeah.
And across the top, I have my learning intention. Here's what I want students to learn today. And I think to myself, how will I know? What would they do? What would they demonstrate? What would they say? What would they draw? What would they write? What would they perform? And when I have the clarity around the evidence for that learning intention, I can simply walk around with my clipboard, and I walk over to Amir, and I walk over to Alita, and I walk over to all of the students, and I listen and I watch and I collect and I note. And I have a very simple way to record. You ready? I use a plus if they got it. I use an equal sign if they're getting it. I use a minus sign, not yet. And when I collect that data, it causes me to walk over to every student and look for evidence. It becomes a very tight design. You see, what happens in many classrooms is it's loose. The teacher might not be clear about what they want students to learn. The students are not clear about what the learning is or what mastery looks like. And the teacher isn't collecting data every day for every kid. It starts with the gift of clarity. What are we here to learn? What will mastery look like? And as a teacher, I can walk around with my clipboard and I just walk over to every child and I collect with my clipboard plus, equal, or minus. And then when I collect that data, it is now that I can purposefully plan for tomorrow. If we count on homework, too risky, because we can't know, A, if the kid will do it, and B, if it comes back done, who did it? What if mom did it? What if dad did it? What if nobody did it? What if they copied it on the bus? What we need to know at the end of every lesson, listen, at the end of every lesson, who got it and who didn't. That's how we plan for tomorrow.
Yes. Thank you so much. I think we have so much to learn from you. Thank you so much for this beautiful speech and so much of enlightenment. And it was such a pleasure having you over on Detox today. Thank you, everybody. And this is your host Anupma Mahajan signing off. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you.